The minivan was a bubble of comfortable silence, the kind that only comes on a long drive home. The dad drove with a steady hand, his eyes constantly moving between the road ahead and the mirrors. It was a habit, a quiet watchfulness that had been baked into him over years of a job the family didn't talk about much. He was just dad on a rare week off, taking his wife and their 2 teenagers back from visiting a potential college. His wife sat in the passenger seat, her head resting against the window, watching the pine trees of Crawley County blur past. In the back, their son had headphones on, lost in a game on his phone, while their daughter stared out at the passing fields, already imagining her life away at school. It was the golden hour, the sun painting everything in long, warm shadows. The road was mostly empty, a 2-lane highway cutting through farmland. The dad noticed the sheriff's cruiser parked at a closed-down feed store off to the side. He noted it, the way a fisherman notes a ripple on the water, and then let it go. He was doing the speed limit. Exactly. The van was in perfect order. There was no reason for concern. But 10 minutes later, the cruiser was there again, in his rear-view mirror. It had come up from a side road and settled in behind them, matching their speed exactly. Not gaining, not falling back, just pacing them. A little knot tightened between the dad's shoulder blades. He said nothing, not wanting to worry his wife. He just checked his mirrors again. The cruiser stayed there for a full 2 miles, a silent white and green shadow. Then the lights flashed, bright, swirling red and blue, cutting through the peaceful afternoon. "Okay," the dad said, his voice calm. "We're getting pulled over." He signaled smoothly, guiding the minivan onto the wide gravel shoulder. The cruiser pulled up close behind, the lights still flashing, throwing crazy patterns inside their car. "I was right on the limit," he murmured to his wife, more thinking out loud than anything. She sat up straight, the sleepiness gone from her eyes, replaced by a familiar, wary alertness. In the back, the son pulled off his headphones. "What's going on?" he asked. "Just a traffic stop, son," the dad said, his voice low and even. "Everyone just sit tight. Be polite." He rolled down his window and placed his hands on the top of the steering wheel where they could be easily seen. The deputy who approached was named Boyd, according to his badge. He had a face that looked like it was used to being in charge, with a thin, unsmiling mouth. He didn't greet them. "License and registration," he said, his voice flat. The dad moved slowly, deliberately. He reached into the center console for the registration, then to his wallet for his license. He also pulled out a different card, a military ID, and placed it on top. It was an old instinct, a small offering of common ground between people who served. "Evening, deputy," the dad said, handing over the small stack. "Everything in order?" Deputy Boyd took the cards without a word. His eyes scanned the license, then flicked to the military ID. He stared at it for a long second. Something changed in his face. It wasn't respect that flashed in his eyes. It was something colder, harder to read. He looked from the ID to the dad's face, to the wife in the passenger seat, to the 2 teenagers in the back. He didn't say another word. He just turned and walked back to his cruiser, holding the cards. Minutes ticked by. The family sat in silence. The mom reached over and put her hand on her husband's arm. He gave her a small, tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was watching the cruiser in the side mirror. He could see the silhouette of the deputy inside, not seeming to run his information, just sitting there, talking on his radio. "This is taking a while," the son said from the back, his voice tinged with anxiety. "I know," the dad replied. "Just be patient." After what felt like an eternity, Deputy Boyd returned. He handed back the license, the registration, and the military ID. He held out a single yellow piece of paper. "Written warning," Boyd said, his voice devoid of any feeling. "You drifted over the white line back there. Pay more attention to your lane discipline." The dad took the paper. "I will. Thank you, officer." Boyd gave one last, long look into the car, his eyes sweeping over each family member as if he was cataloging them. Then he turned and walked away, got in his cruiser, and sat there. The dad let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. He carefully put the van in drive, signaled, and pulled back onto the empty highway. "Okay," the wife said, her voice full of relief. "Just a warning." "That's okay." "Yeah," the dad said. But he wasn't relieved. He watched in the rearview mirror. The cruiser's lights went off, but it didn't pull out. It just sat there on the shoulder, growing smaller and smaller in the distance. "He's not moving," the daughter said quietly from the back seat. "I see him," the dad said. They drove for another mile, then two. The sun was lower now. The dad kept checking the mirror. The road behind them remained empty. The knot in his shoulders began to loosen, just a little. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe the deputy was just finishing his report. Maybe it was just a bad mood. But in his gut, a place that had kept him alive in faraway deserts and mountains, he knew. That long look into the car hadn't been about a traffic violation. It had been an assessment. And the fact that the cruiser was still sitting there, back on that lonely stretch of road, felt less like an end and more like a pause. He drove on, the written warning on the passenger seat, feeling not like a reprieve, but like the first move in a game he never wanted to play. The relief inside the minivan was thin and fragile. No one spoke for a few miles, the only sound the hum of the tires on the asphalt. The wife let her head fall back against the seat, closing her eyes. The teenagers in the back slowly returned to their phones, the strange tension of the stop beginning to fade. The dad, however, felt no relief. His hands were at 10 and 2 on the wheel, his eyes constantly tracing a pattern. Road ahead, rearview mirror, side mirror, repeat. The written warning on the dashboard felt like an accusation. He replayed the deputy's cold stare, the long pause with his documents, the way the man's eyes had hardened at the sight of the military ID. It wasn't adding up to a simple traffic stop. They were deeper into Crawley County now. The farms were bigger, more spread out, the houses farther apart. The sunset was turning the sky a bruised purple and orange. It would be dark soon. That's when he saw the headlights coming up fast behind them. Not the casual speed of another traveler. These were gaining quickly, purposefully. A moment later, the familiar red and blue lights lit up the interior of the minivan once more, sharp and garish in the gathering dusk. A cold certainty settled in the dad's stomach. This was not a coincidence. Again? His wife whispered, her voice tight with a new fear. The kids in the back sat up straight, all traces of their distraction gone, replaced by a confused alarm. "It's okay," the dad said, his voice a low, steady rumble. He signaled and pulled over again, this time onto a narrower, gravel-strewn shoulder near a thicket of pine trees. He made sure to leave plenty of room between his van and the ditch. Everyone, just like before. Sit tight. Be quiet. Let me do the talking. This cruiser pulled in close, right up to their bumper, its bright grille seeming to push against them. The door opened, and a different deputy got out. He was taller, broader, with a way of walking that swaggered even on gravel. The name on his chest read Royce. Royce didn't walk to the driver's window. He went to the passenger side, shining his flashlight directly into the wife's face, making her flinch and raise a hand to block the light. He then swept the beam over the two teenagers in the back before finally coming to the driver's window. The dad had already rolled it down, his hands back on the wheel. "Evening, deputy. Is there a problem?" Royce leaned in, resting his elbows on the doorframe, invading their space. His breath smelled of coffee and chewing tobacco. "I'll ask the questions. You seem to be in an awful hurry. You nervous about something?" "No, sir," the dad replied, keeping his eyes forward, not meeting the deputy's challenging gaze directly. "Just taking my family home. We were stopped about 20 minutes back. Received a warning." "I know you were," Royce said, a mean little smile playing on his lips. "My partner, Boyd, radioed me. Said you were acting real twitchy. Said your story didn't line up. Makes me think maybe you've got something in this vehicle you don't want us to see." The wife spoke up, her voice shaking slightly. "We don't have anything. We're just a family." Royce ignored her, his eyes locked on the dad. "I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle. We're going to do a search." The dad's mind, which had been ticking along like a quiet clock, now shifted into a different gear entirely. This was the play. This was the shakedown. Isolate, intimidate, invent a reason, then search. In a search, anything could be found. Anything could be planted. He knew the law. He knew his rights. "I do not consent to any search of my vehicle, deputy," he said, his voice still calm, but now firmer, leaving no room for argument. Royce's smile vanished. His face darkened. "Excuse me?" "I said, I do not consent to a search. You have no probable cause. We've committed no crime. We are not under arrest. I am exercising my right to refuse." For a second, Royce looked stunned, as if no one had ever said no to him. The anger that followed was quick and hot. "You think your little military card makes you a lawyer? Step out of the car. Now, am I being detained?" The dad asked, the question clean and precise. "You're being told to step out of the vehicle. On what charge? What is your probable cause?" Royce straightened up, his hand going to the radio on his shoulder. He keyed the mic, his voice loud and performative. "Unit 7, I need backup at my location. Got a non-compliant driver, possible DUI, refusing lawful orders. Requesting 2 additional units." The words hung in the air, poisonous and heavy. Possible DUI. The dad hadn't touched a drink in years. Refusing lawful orders. He was refusing an unlawful one. But the lie was now in the official record. The mom had gone pale. In the back seat, their daughter had started to cry silently, and their son was breathing fast, his fists clenched. The dad could feel their fear like a physical thing in the car. He wanted to turn and tell them it would be okay, but he couldn't break his focus. He could not show a single crack in his composure. He saw the wife's hand, trembling, slip down by her side. He knew what she was doing. She was trying to open her phone's camera to record. He gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of his head. "Not yet. Wait. Within minutes." The night was alive with more swirling lights. 2 more county cruisers arrived, kicking up gravel as they parked at angles, completely boxing the minivan in. 4 deputies now stood in a loose half-circle around the driver's side door. The message was clear. You are surrounded. You are outnumbered. You are ours. The lead deputy now was a sergeant, an older man with a gray mustache and cold eyes. Halle. He listened as Royce spoke to him in low, angry tones, pointing at the dad. Sergeant Halle approached. "Sir, step out of the vehicle. This is your last chance to cooperate before we escalate this situation." The dad knew what escalate meant. Broken windows. Dragged from the car. Tasers. Guns. His children watching. His wife screaming. His training screamed at him to assess the threats, to find the weak point in their formation. But this wasn't a battlefield where he could fight his way out. His family was the mission, and their safety was the only objective. Fighting meant losing. He took a slow, quiet breath. He had to change the game. He couldn't win a physical confrontation here. He had to win a different one. He looked at the ring of hardened faces under the flashing lights, then back at the terrified faces of his family. The real battle was just beginning, and it was a battle of wills, of law, and of who would break first. The world had shrunk to the circle of harsh light, and the 4 deputies standing in it. The dad could feel the weight of their stares, the impatience in their stances. He could hear his daughter's quiet crying from the back seat, a sound that cut through him sharper than any threat. The Sergeant Howell was waiting for an answer. The other 3, Royce and the 2 new arrivals, were like coiled springs, ready for the word to grab him. The dad knew with absolute clarity that if he got out of the car now, he was giving up all control. He would be separated from his family. Things would happen in the dark, away from their eyes. His training was screaming at him to act, to do something. But the most important lesson he'd ever learned was that sometimes the strongest action is perfect stillness. The smartest move is to let your enemy make the mistake. He turned his head slowly, just enough to look at Sergeant Hawley. He kept his voice low, so low that Hawley had to lean in a little to hear it over the idling cruisers. It wasn't a voice of confrontation. It was a voice of calm, unsettling fact. "Sergeant, my family is frightened," he said, his eyes glancing toward the back seat. "My wife and my children. They have not done anything. I have not done anything. You have no probable cause to remove me from this vehicle, or to search it." Royce barked from behind Hawley. "He's resisting a lawful order." The dad didn't raise his voice. He kept it aimed at Hall, the man in charge. "I am not resisting. I am seated in my vehicle with my hands on the steering wheel. I am asking you to explain the legal basis for your order. Is this a detention or an arrest? If so, I need to hear the charge." He was speaking a different language now. Not the language of roadside shouting and intimidation, but the cold, precise language of the law. He saw a flicker of uncertainty in Hale's eyes. This wasn't going the way it usually did. Usually, people yelled back or got scared and complied, or made a run for it. This man was just sitting there. A rock in a fast river. Hale's jaw tightened. "We have reason to believe you may be under the influence. Step out for a field sobriety test." The dad gave a small, slow nod, as if considering it. "I will happily take a breathalyzer test right here, Sergeant. I have not consumed any alcohol. But a field test on this uneven gravel, in these lights, is subjective. My military service left me with a knee injury. I cannot perform those walks reliably. I'm telling you this so you have all the information. It was a perfect counter. It was reasonable. It was factual. It removed their flimsy excuse and called their bluff, all while appearing completely cooperative. He wasn't saying no. He was offering a better, more concrete yes. Haile was stuck. He couldn't force a breathalyzer without more cause, and the man had just neatly dismantled the other option. During this quiet exchange, the dad's wife understood. Her fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but she saw what her husband was doing. He was building a wall of words and reason, brick by careful brick. She remembered what he'd told the kids long ago, during a safety talk that had felt silly at the time. If we're ever in real trouble, and I say, remember the lake house rules, it means be quiet. Be still and watch. She reached her hand back between the seats, finding her daughter's knee and giving it a firm squeeze. She caught her son's eye in the mirror and gave a tiny sharp shake of her head. Asterisk, don't speak. Don't move. Watch. Asterisk, the dad, meanwhile, was doing his own kind of watching. Without moving his head, he was taking in everything. He noted which deputy kept his hand near his gun. He saw the youngest of the new arrivals, who looked more nervous than angry. He saw the way Royce was fuming, desperate for this to turn physical. He saw the way Hale's eyes kept darting to the other cruisers, to the empty road. He was calculating the risk. The math was changing. We can do this the easy way or the hard way, Hawley said, but the threat had lost some of its steam. I want the lawful way, Sergeant, the dad replied. That's the only way I know. You can run my license. It's clean. You can run the registration. The vehicle is mine. You can give me a breathalyzer right now. I will pass. After that, you have no lawful reason to hold us. My children are tired. We just want to go home. He was appealing to the last shred of decency, while simultaneously laying out the legal dead end they were heading for. He was giving Hawley an out. A face-saving retreat. Royce couldn't take it. He stomped forward, leaning into the window, his face close to the dad's. Who do you think you are? You think you're special? You're on my road. You follow my orders. For the first time, the dad turned and looked directly at Royce. He didn't glare. He didn't show anger. He just looked at him, his eyes flat and empty, like two stones at the bottom of a deep well. It was the complete absence of fear, of reaction. It was more unnerving than any shout. Deputy, the dad said, his voice now so quiet, it was almost a whisper, yet it carried perfectly. You are screaming in front of my children. You are frightening my wife. You have 4 armed men surrounding our car over a lane violation. What do you think is going to happen next? What exactly is your goal here? The question hung in the air. Royce had no answer. His goal was to dominate, to crush. But this man couldn't be crushed. He could only be broken, and that would require actions in front of witnesses that even Crawley County might not be able to cover up. Hawley saw it too. He put a hand on Royce's chest and pushed him back, just a step. Go wait by the car, he muttered. The standoff had shifted. The dad had absorbed their aggression and reflected back nothing but calm logic. He had fractured their unity. He had protected his family without moving a muscle. And now, in the silence that followed, the only sound was the static from the police radios and the ragged breath of a scared teenager in the back seat. The next move was theirs, and for the first time, the deputies looked unsure of what that move should be. The silence after the dad's question was thick and heavy. Sergeant Hawley stood by the driver's window, his face working as he tried to figure out his next move. The other 3 deputies had taken a half step back, their confidence wobbling. The man in the car wasn't yelling, wasn't fighting. He was just waiting. And he was right. They all felt the truth of his question hanging in the air. Asterisk, what exactly is your goal here? Asterisk Hawley cleared his throat. The bluster was gone, replaced by a colder, more official tone. He had to regain control. Sir, step out of the vehicle. You are being detained for obstruction. The words were a trap, and the dad knew it. If he got out now, they would handcuff him. They would separate him from his family. In their custody, anything could happen. Failing to obey could become resisting arrest. A stumble could become assault on an officer. He had seen the playbook before, in places far away and much more dangerous. This was the critical moment. The line between a bad night and a life-changing tragedy was this thin. He couldn't cross it, but he couldn't let them drag him across it either. He took a slow, quiet breath, the kind he used to take before a shot that had to count. He looked up at Hala, his face calm but utterly serious. Sergeant High, he said, his voice clear and firm, carrying in the quiet night. He used the name on the badge, making it official. You are detaining me without probable cause during an unlawful attempted search. My name is Chief Warrant Officer. And here he gave his name and his long service number, the digits rolling out with practiced ease. I am now invoking my right to remain silent. I will not answer any further questions. I am requesting the immediate presence of an attorney from the judge. Advocate General's course. I will not take any tests or answer any questions without my JAG attorney present. He wasn't talking to Hale as a man pulled over on a road. He was talking to him as a senior member of the United States military, invoking a specific and powerful branch of its legal system. The message was unmistakable. Asterisk, you are no longer dealing with a civilian. You are engaging with the Department of Defense. Asterisk. Hale blinked. The obstruction charge had just evaporated. You can't obstruct by legally invoking your rights. The breathalyzer offer was off the table. The man had just lawyered up in the most formidable way possible. From inside the car, the wife's mind was racing. She heard the absolute finality in her husband's voice. This was the signal. The wall was built. Now, they needed windows. Her phone was in her hand, below the level of the door. She had opened the camera app minutes ago. With trembling fingers, she switched it to video, tilted it up, and hit record. She rested her hand on the seat, pointing the lens toward the driver's window. It was risky, but they needed a record. The son, in the back, saw what his mom was doing. He felt a surge of panic, then a wave of clarity. He had to help. He had to do something. He remembered his dad's words from what felt like a lifetime ago. Asterisk, if you can't fight, observe. Be a witness. Asterisk, he leaned forward, his voice surprisingly steady, cutting through the tense quiet. He didn't yell. He spoke directly to his dad, but loudly enough for everyone to hear. Dad? Mom's phone. Her live stream. She started it when they first boxed us in. It's got over 500 viewers now. The comments are going crazy. They can all see this. It was a complete lie. A brilliant, desperate lie. But he sold it with the wide-eyed, earnest fear of a teenager. He wasn't challenging the deputies. He was just informing his father. A kid worried about his mom's social media. The effect was electric. Every deputy's head snapped toward the wife. She didn't look up. She just kept her hand still, the phone screen glowing faintly in her lap. She played her part, giving a small, stiff nod, as if confirming her son's story. Sergeant Hale's face went pale under the flashing lights. Live stream. The word was like a bucket of ice water. This wasn't just about controlling a family on a dark road anymore. This was about an audience. Hundreds of people. Maybe being recorded right now. Evidence that couldn't be lost or misplaced. Their actions were no longer in the dark. They were on a stage. Royce took an involuntary step back, out of the frame of the window. The two other deputies exchanged a frantic look. The whole dynamic shattered. Their power relied on isolation, on the he said, she said of a deserted county road. That was gone. Hale leaned down, his voice a harsh whisper now, all pretense of official procedure gone. Turn that off. Right now. The dad spoke for the first time since invoking his rights. She has the right to record a police interaction in a public space, Sergeant. It's protected. Just as I have the right to an attorney. He paused, then added the quiet hammer blow. Your backup call and your statements are part of that record now. My JAG attorney and I will review it all. Very carefully. Hale straightened up. He looked from the dad's impassive face to the wife's hidden phone, to the scared kids in the back. He looked at his own men, who were now just watching him, waiting for him to get them out of this mess they'd created. The risk had catastrophically outweighed whatever petty reward they'd hoped for. He made a sharp, angry gesture with his hand. Get back to your cars, he barked at the other deputies. They didn't need to be told twice. They turned and walked quickly, their boots crunching on the gravel. Royce looked like he wanted to argue, but one look at Hale's face shut him up. He stalked off, throwing a last venomous glance at the minivan. Hale turned back to the window. The fight was gone from him. It had been replaced by a kind of sick, weary damage control. "You can go," he muttered, the words tasting like ash. "Am I free to leave? Are we all free to leave?" The dad asked, needing the clear statement on the record. "Yes, you're free to leave. Thank you, Sergeant." Hale walked away without another word. The dad waited until all the deputies were in their cruisers, until the red and blue lights flicked off, leaving them in sudden, profound darkness. He took another deep, shaky breath. His hands were still steady on the wheel. "Is it safe?" His wife whispered, her voice cracking. "Not yet," he said softly. "Not until we're out of this county." He put the van in drive. The cruisers didn't move. They just sat there, dark shapes in the night, as he pulled slowly onto the empty road and drove away, the family holding their breath until the last of the taillights disappeared behind them. The battle on the roadside was over, but the war wasn't. For the first 20 miles, no one in the minivan said a word. The only sounds were the hum of the engine and the occasional shaky breath from the back seat. The dad drove with the same focused calm, but his eyes were different now. They weren't just watching the road. They were scanning it, checking every crossroad, every pair of headlights that appeared behind them. He didn't relax until they crossed a rusted metal bridge with a sign that read, "Leaving Crawley County. Come back soon." They didn't plan on it. He found the first well-lit, busy truck stop just inside the next county and pulled in among the 18-wheelers. The bright lights and the normalcy of people pumping gas and buying coffee felt like stepping onto another planet. "Everyone okay?" he asked, finally turning to look at his family. His wife's face was streaked with dried tears. His daughter was curled into herself, and his son was staring straight ahead, jaw clenched tight. No one answered. "Okay" was a universe away. He got out and filled the tank, his movements automatic. He went inside and bought 4 bottles of water and a pack of crackers. When he came back, he passed them around. It was a small thing, something to do, something normal. They all drank, the water tasting like dust. "We need to find a place to sleep for the night," he said. "Not here. Somewhere bigger. A chain hotel near the highway." His wife just nodded. She was holding her phone in both hands, as if it were a holy object or a live grenade. They drove another hour to a mid-sized town and pulled into the parking lot of a familiar hotel. He paid in cash, a habit from his other life. The room was generic and clean. 2 double beds. The kids collapsed onto one, still in their clothes, a tangled pile of exhaustion and shock. The wife sat on the edge of the other bed, just staring at the wall. The dad locked the door, put the chain on, and pulled the curtains closed. Then he took a chair and wedged it under the door handle. It was a simple, physical act of security. His son watched him do it, and for the first time that night, the boy's face showed something other than fear. A flicker of understanding. Now, the dad sat down at the small desk. He took out his own phone and a small notebook from his bag. The family vacation was over. A new mission had begun. "Can you send me the video?" he asked his wife. His voice gentle. She wordlessly pulled out her phone, tapped it, and a moment later his phone chimed. He plugged in his headphones and watched it all. The shaky footage of Royce's angry face, the audio of the threats, the call for backup, his own calm, clear voice invoking his rights, and his JAG attorney. It was all there. The son's brilliant, desperate lie about the live stream was the climax. He felt a surge of pride so fierce it hurt, but emotion was a luxury. He set it aside. He opened his notebook and began to write in clean, precise block letters. It wasn't a story. It was a report. An after-action report. He listed the time, the location, the weather conditions. He drew a rough diagram of the positioning of the vehicles. He wrote down the badge numbers and names of every deputy. Boyd, Royce, the two others, Sergeant Hawley. He quoted their exact words as he remembered them. He noted the make, model, and plate numbers of the cruisers. He documented the written warning from the first stop, which was still crumpled on the van's floor. He was building a case file. When the report was finished, he began to work on his phone. He didn't just send an angry email to the Crawley County Sheriff. That would be like dropping a pebble into a swamp. He needed an avalanche dot first. He sent a formal notification to his commanding officer and the legal office at his base. The subject line was Incident Report, Harassment and Attempted Civil Rights Violation by Local Law Enforcement. Attached was his written report and the video file. The involvement of the Department of Defense was now official. A service member had been targeted. It was a jurisdictional wildfire that no small-town sheriff could stamp out. Next, he found the official websites. He filed a detailed complaint with the Civil Rights Division of the state's Attorney General's office. He filed another with the U.S. Department of Justice's FBI tip line, specifying deprivation of rights under color of law. He used the case file number from his military report on all of them, creating a paper trail that linked everything together. He wasn't a victim sending a plea. He was a professional submitting evidence to multiple higher authorities. He made it easy for them. The facts were clear. The documentation was solid. The violation was obvious. It took him most of the night. The room was dark, except for the blue glow of his phone screen. His wife finally fell into a fitful sleep. His children were still. He worked until his eyes burned. Just before dawn, he finished. He sent the last email. He leaned back in the creaky hotel chair and finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of the night. The fear for his family. The cold anger at the corruption. The deep sadness that this was the world he had to bring them home to. Weeks passed. Life returned to its normal rhythm, but the shadow of that road was always there, unspoken at the dinner table, present in a sudden tension when a police car drove past. Then the news trickled in. Not from a phone call or a letter, but from a state newspaper article a friend sent him. Crawley County deputies arrested on federal charges. Sheriff resigns amid DOJ investigation. Sergeant and two others implicated in pattern of misconduct. The article was dry and legal, but he read between the lines. The federal investigation, sparked by multiple complaints, he knew his was just one, had torn the lid off a rotten system. Boyd and Royce were facing years in prison. Hawley and the sheriff were gone. The department was being dismantled and rebuilt under a federal consent decree. There was no victory party, no feeling of triumph. The dad sat at his kitchen table, reading the article on his tablet, and felt only a hollow relief. He thought of the other families, the ones without his training, without his knowledge of how to fight back. He wondered how many there had been. His son came into the kitchen, getting a glass of water. He saw the article on the screen. He didn't say anything for a minute. Then he asked, quietly, "Did we do that?" The dad looked at his son, at the young man who had thought of the live stream lie, who had held his composure when it mattered most. "No," the dad said finally, his voice rough. "They did that to themselves. We just made sure someone was watching." He closed the tablet. The job was done. The threat was over. But the memory and the lesson would stay with them forever. He was a soldier, but in that moment on a dark road, his most important mission had been being a father. And he had completed it.